For decades, we've been told that warmth in extreme conditions comes down to layers, wool, and thick blankets. That belief feels timeless, almost unquestionable. Yet during World War II, soldiers, sailors, aircrews and medics relied on an insulating material so effective that it outperformed standard blankets in cold, wet and life-or-death conditions. It worked when soaked, compressed and abused. It required no electricity, no complex manufacturing and no modern chemistry. Today, most people have never heard of it, even though it once saved thousands of lives and quietly solved problems modern insulation still struggles with. This story isn't about myth or nostalgia. It's about a material that military planners trusted when failure meant hypothermia, exposure, or death. Once you understand how and why it worked, you start to see insulation differently, not as thickness, but as trapped air, structure, and resilience. That shift in thinking is just as useful now as it was in 1943. Why World War II forced militaries to rethink insulation completely. World War II exposed a brutal reality. Traditional blankets failed under real combat conditions. Wool was warm but heavy, slow to dry, and dangerous when soaked. Cotton blankets absorbed water, collapsed under compression and lost insulating power almost immediately. In the North Atlantic, the Arctic convoy routes, the Pacific Island campaigns and high-altitude bomber missions, cold was as lethal as enemy fire. Military engineers needed insulation that worked wet, dried fast, resisted compression, and stayed effective in constant motion. Ships sank, aircraft ditched, troops marched through rain and snow for days. Blankets could not keep up with that reality. The solution came not from textiles, but from plant fibers that trapped air in a radically different way. Kapok became the silent thermal shield of the war. Kapok is a natural fiber harvested from the seed pods of the kapok tree, native to tropical regions. On the surface, it looks unimpressive, light, fluffy, almost fragile. But its internal structure is where the magic happens. Each fiber is hollow and coated in a natural wax. That hollow core traps air, while the wax resists water absorption. Unlike wool or cotton, kapok does not collapse when wet. It maintains loft, buoyancy and thermal resistance even when soaked. During the Second World War, kapok was widely used in life jackets, flight suits, sleeping gear and cold weather padding. Sailors who fell into freezing water survived longer because kapok trapped warm air around the body while keeping water out of the insulation itself. Downed air crews used kapok-lined gear that stayed warm after exposure to rain, sweat and salt water. In testing, kapok insulation often outperformed wool blankets of far greater weight. Why kapok worked better than blankets under combat conditions? Blankets rely on thickness and mass. Kapok relied on structure. Because kapok fibers are stiff at the microscopic level, they resist clumping. Even when compressed under a body or pack, they rebound quickly, restoring air pockets. Those air pockets are what slow heat loss, not the fiber itself. Another key advantage was moisture behavior. Kapok fibers repel water instead of absorbing it. That meant sweat passed through rather than pooling, reducing evaporative heat loss. Soldiers wrapped in kapok padding stayed warmer during movement, not just while resting. This made a critical difference during marches, guard duty and shipboard work. From a survival standpoint, kapok also offered redundancy. Even if partially crushed or damaged, enough fibres retained structure to maintain insulation. Blankets, once soaked or compacted, failed completely. How World War II forces actually used kapok in the field. Kapok wasn't just sewn into jackets. It was stuffed into pads, liners, flotation gear and emergency bedding. Naval crews slept on kapok-filled mattresses that resisted mould and dried quickly. Pilots wore kapok-lined suits that provided warmth without restricting movement. Medics used kapok padding under casualties to slow heat loss during evacuation. Some troops even improvised insulation by redistributing kapok from damaged life jackets into clothing or bedding. This kind of adaptability only worked because the material remained effective regardless of shape or moisture level. Why this insulator faded from public memory after the war is, well, an interesting story. After the Second World War, synthetic insulation entered the civilian market. Foam, polyester fills, and chemical coatings promised consistency and easy mass production. Kapok harvesting required manual labour and global supply chains tied to former colonies. As petroleum-based materials grew cheaper, kapok quietly disappeared from mainstream use. There were also practical drawbacks, you know. Kapok is flammable unless treated, and its fibres are brittle under repeated mechanical stress. For civilian manufacturers chasing cost and convenience, synthetics won. But in terms of pure thermal performance per weight under harsh conditions, kapok never stopped being effective. So, you know, this knowledge still applies today in some pretty practical ways. Modern survivalists, historians and off-grid builders can still apply kapok's lessons, even if they never actually touch the fibre itself. The key takeaway here is really all about insulation strategy. Trapped air, moisture resistance and structural resilience matter much more than just thickness alone. And honestly, materials that stay lofted when wet will always outperform heavier options that just collapse. You can actually put this into practice by choosing modern insulations that are designed to retain their loft, even under compression. It's also wise to layer breathable barriers rather than sealing moisture in, and to prioritize padding beneath the body rather than just piling it on top. In emergency bedding, flotation gear, or even vehicle kits, buoyant insulating materials provide that dual use, just as kapok did during the war. Understanding kapok, you see, also helps explain why some old military surplus gear still performs surprisingly well, even decades later. It was engineered for failure scenarios, not just for comfort marketing, but for real, demanding situations. Forgotten wartime materials like kapok really do deserve serious attention. Kapok wasn't just some gimmick. It was a wartime solution, forged under pressure and tested in some of the worst environments humans could endure. Its disappearance wasn't because it failed, but rather due to economics and industrial convenience. For anyone who's serious about historical technology, survival systems, or resilient design, ignoring materials like this means losing hard-earned lessons written in real consequences. So, if you'd like more deep dives into forgotten wartime technology, survival materials history, and the engineering decisions that shaped our modern world, do make sure to subscribe to the channel. And, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts and preparedness-minded viewers who value function over hype.